Welcome back, everybody. Derrick Sue, your 2022 Oakland mayoral candidate. Today I'm back talking about PATH, permanent access to housing. And what I'm going to talk about today are the different types of classifications in PATH. The two primary ones, the first one is being sanctuary, and the second one, heritage. And then we have other classifications also. We have those for special needs, like our seniors with medical issues. We also have a safety net. There's safety net housing in PATH. The safety net housing ensures that folks will never have to pitch a tent on the street ever in the city of Oakland. And how that particular program works, we have two things. Before COVID hit, you may remember me talking about a floating community. Then back in November and December, we had Rebecca Kaplan, the city council president at large, and she started talking about the floating communities, the cruise ships. And I've been working with Oakland Planning Commission. I work with the Port of Oakland and several other agencies on this particular project, and it is going to move forward. Originally, what you heard was that a lot of folks were saying that there aren't any cruise ships available, so that program will never work. Well, COVID-19 just changed that. We have plenty of ships available. And what's interesting is that the cruise industry is now interested in my program in its entirety. And they realize that this program, when it takes off, not only covers the entire top to bottom of the West Coast, it covers all of the East Coast ports, it covers Gulf State ports, and it covers the Great Lakes. So this particular program can be utilized in a lot of different areas. So the floating communities, with what I have in store right now, I had secured already 6 cruise ships. That means each one of those cruise ships has between 1,700 and 2,000 cabins, immediate housing available. And then folks, you're saying, well, that's fine and dandy and putting them on a cruise ship, but we can't afford to buy cruise ships and pay for all of these. No, you're right, we can't afford it. City of Oakland is broke. How the cruise ship program is paid for is through the U.S. Census monies that is provided by grants. There are over 134 different census grants, and that gets funded for a decade. And so that's how we pay for the floating communities. As far as the area, that we're looking at Oakland's Middle Harbor. And that used to be a military harborage. That was all part of, back in the day, Military Sealift Command. And what Military Sealift Command did, they had transport ships, oilers, and other ships that were ready to sail in under 30 days. And these ships brought supplies, uniforms, food, camping, medical. They didn't bring ammo or explosives or anything like that. So it was a safe place. It's a clean location. And right now it's terribly, terribly underutilized. So what we're doing, we're reclaiming 101 acres of space, creating the floating communities. And what's also interesting about these floating communities, they also serve as the foundation for rebuilding our Oakland businesses, our Oakland Chamber of Commerce. We are losing so many businesses, so many operations here in Oakland. And the high cost of rent, the high cost of square footage, this is hurting Oakland financially and devastating our business community. And so with these cruise ships, we can now offer much lower cost opportunities for businesses all over Oakland, Alameda County. Imagine this. You could have a very, very nice ocean or bayside restaurant on a cruise ship and have nice meals, and rather than paying $100 for that meal or $50 for that meal, pay $20. Much more reasonable, because the cost, their overhead is going to be drastically cut. Right now, I can't believe how most restaurants can even function paying $20,000 to $40,000 a month in rent. And then you have employees and all the utilities, plus the insurance and everything. It's crazy that restaurants or any business can function these days with the high cost of rent for everything. And so the floating communities afford an opportunity, a whole new opportunity and a different world where we can speed up the recovery of Oakland. And so that's the floating communities. That's part of my plan. That's also part of PATH. PATH is a very, very important element that's coming to Oakland. So sanctuary housing, that one covers one of the most important housing issues that we have here in Oakland, and that's for the school teachers. School teachers can't afford to live here in Oakland anymore. They have to drive anywhere from an hour to 2 hours away in a lot of cases. And so that's not acceptable. Plus, we need to have these teachers in our communities. We need to have them close by. I want them to be working within walking distance, if that's possible, of their school that they teach. So school teachers have a high priority in PATH and with me. Then we have our medical professionals. Medical professionals can't afford to live here in Oakland either, so they're living outside the areas, going over the hills, going to Sacramento, Vacaville, Fairfield. They're driving 45 to an hour away. And in the event of an emergency, we have the golden hour. If we can't have our medical personnel in the hospitals when we need them in under an hour, that's a huge issue. And the city administrators aren't thinking ahead about a lot of these critical issues that we have currently. So we have to address them. That's one of the ways that we're going to address the issue and bring affordable housing back to Oakland through PATH. And PATH is a great program. Also here with the sanctuary, we have housing available for our essential workers of the city. We're not going to have city personnel so much, but the SEIU, union folks, these are all folks that can apply for the sanctuary housing, or if they've lived in Oakland long enough, they can also apply for heritage housing. Heritage housing is a protection and a type of housing for a lot of Oaklanders who have been here for a long time, but unfortunately they were scammed or financially harmed during the scams of the early and mid 2000s, where they lost a home to predatory lending or any scam type of offers where they ended up losing their home. And so we have protections for those folks. You're going to be able to continue to live in Oakland. If you live outside of Oakland, you'll be able to apply. Once you're approved, you can move back into Oakland. You can buy a home through PATH, and you own that home. That home is yours forever in PATH. And so that's one of the critical issues that we're bringing back is home ownership. Home ownership is one of the most important features that we have to include in PATH and with Oakland, because right now our actual homeowners numbers are extremely low. We're down to 38% homeownership in Oakland. That is horrible. The national average for home ownership nationally is 62%. And 62% represents a good balance in most cities, especially major cities. And if we don't have that kind of balance, then the region becomes very unstable, as we've seen here in the San Francisco Bay Area. We've had a lot of issues with housing. We have the work market. I mean, just all sorts of things happen. And so with lower cost housing available to everybody can claim a small space in Oakland. Heritage housing helps not only the harmed former Oaklanders, but this also heritage housing allows an entry for our homeless population. Our homeless population, many of the folks do have an income, and many are great people. And we need to reincorporate and blend our homeless population back into society. I don't know what policing will look like in the future, but one of the biggest problems that we have with Oakland police is that 80% of all Oakland police officers live outside of Oakland. In fact, most of them, 67%, are an hour away. So that's not acceptable. Back in my day, police officers lived in the community, and you didn't have people shooting people like you do right now, and that's because there's no community connection. These officers have no community connection. They don't understand the people. And then here in East Oakland, we have a major problem with Oakland police. Here we have a predominantly black community in East Oakland, and it's overseen by a predominantly white Oakland Police Department. In fact, many of the times that I'm observing issues here on the street with our black community, there's not a black officer anywhere around. Literally, there are no officers of color here in East Oakland that I've run into. And so that becomes a very big problem. The officers are completely disassociated with the community. We need to reincorporate them back into our community, bring them so that they trust people, that they are known by people. And so it's less likely that they're going to shoot anybody, that they're going to harm people, that they're going to cause injuries to our communities. So we need to have our safety officers somewhere incorporated into the community of Oakland. And so PATH allows that. In most cases, we'll designate them under sanctuary. They won't be heritage unless they were born and raised here in Oakland. So that's one of the primary things in heritage. If you're born and raised here in Oakland, you went through the Oakland Unified School District or the Oakland Public Schools, which in my days, that's what it was called, OPS. You can apply for heritage housing. And once you're awarded your land lease, then you're directed to where the different models of homes are, and then that's where you start deciding on your home, your home that you're going to buy, and that the home prices in PATH start somewhere between $18,000 and $20,000 for a very basic home, and that basic home is approximately 12 feet by 12 feet, but it's 2 stories. So it's not a real big place, but it's a place that offers you safety. It's a real home that you own. It has a kitchen, it has bathrooms, has hot and cold running water, has heating and air conditioning and lighting, everything that a regular home has. And so these are things that you can also take with you when you decide to move, because I foresee that PATH will take a very positive course, and that land and property is going to be available through either city land trust, county land trust, or state land trust. And they're all by BLM, which is Bureau of Land Management. And so these are properties that are acquired through foreclosures, through abandonment, some sales. So there's a lot of different ways that PATH acquires property and real estate for the program. And it keeps the cost down and as low as possible. It makes it affordable for everybody. So that's two of the most important parts of PATH. It's affordable for everybody, even if you have zero income, through U.S. Census grants. Folks with zero income or that can't afford a home can actually apply for these grants and have their home paid for through the grant and still own the home. Also, what's nice is that through the financing program that I'm working with a lot of local banks, if you have difficulties making those payments, the alternative is to go back to the center where we help you to put together your home, arrange the financing, everything. We will also help you acquire payment via one of those grants. If for some reason your finances change, you're no longer able to make the payments. So we're always going to keep you housed. You're not going to lose your house. That's the last thing PATH wants to see happen. Anybody lose their home. PATH guarantees housing. Let me say that again. PATH guarantees housing. So that's what's coming in my PATH program. Give you kind of a taste there of what I'm working on. In my next feature, I'll be going over the housing and the different models. One of the primary companies that we're using in conjunction with this partnership, because we are actually working in conjunction with private industry and working directly with them. There are no middle people. The middle people are Oakland City staff and myself. We work directly with the supplier and the end user being the homeowner. Make sure everything rolls satisfactorily, and we keep costs as low as possible. By keeping costs low as possible, we also have in PATH our utilities are solar or by wind power. So we incorporate solar and wind energy into each one of the homes, making them very eco-friendly. You don't have utility bills with the tiny home villages. Your water is provided through the tiny home village and is paid for through your HOA. HOAs are very reasonable at this point. I foresee $150 to $250 HOA fees that covers not only the small rent on the land for your land lease, but it covers your water, your sewer, your insurance, covers your garbage, all of your services for the property, and then also covers your management of the housing. So your HOAs are always going to be covered. You have management that oversees the site, professional management, and these are HOAs that are certified and approved by the city, and I know a lot about the HOAs and the process on certifying them through the city. Back in the early days, back in the 80s, I was actually an HOA president for a large association in Alameda. I was one of the youngest presidents ever at 28, and I learned a lot. I learned a lot about HOAs and how they function and operate, and it's so similar to what self-governed camps do out on the street. And that's why I've always been an advocate for self-governed encampments, because that's the very foundation and basis for HOAs. HOAs cover a lot of different things, not just homes, but also boats, apartments, condos. I mean, across the country, there are all sorts of HOAs. So HOAs are the way to integrate PATH into the capitalist housing system. It's a non-competitive system. It does not compete against the capitalist system. But it is a housing first model. It is a housing first model. So we need to move forward, get people housed off the streets in the safety. Because living on the street, the actual statistic is that for many of the individuals living out on the streets, you're going to lose somewhere between 10 and 25 years of life. 10 and 25 years shorter life. Wow. That's hard to think about, because here I am. I've already been out on the streets for well over 5 years, coming up on 6 years. And I'm already 60. So if you took 10 years off my life, I'm already 70. Or I could be 80, 85 already. That's a scary thought. Plus the amount of violence on the street. There's a lot of violence directed at many of the homeless. And there are really no good outcomes on those. But anyway, stick with me. We'll be right back. We'll talk some more about PATH on our next episode. Stay tuned.